For over a century, the quiet shores of Virginia Beach have held secrets that never made headlines. Tourists come for the ocean breeze, the salty air, the boardwalk, but buried beneath the sand and time lies something stranger than fiction. A story that begins not with an explosion or a revelation, but with dust, silence, and a wooden box. It was the winter of 2023 when Lisa Myers, a 41-year-old archival specialist, began her contract at the Association for Research and Enlightenment, known to insiders as simply the ARE. It was Cayce's organization, founded in the 1930s, a hub for seekers, skeptics, and spiritual wanderers alike. The building looked almost ordinary. Brick and glass, low-slung roofs, quiet hallways filled with shelves and old paper. But behind one of those hallways, behind an unassuming steel door with a keypad, sat the restricted archive, off-limits to the public, accessible only to those with clearance. Lisa didn't consider herself a spiritual person. Her background was in information science, not mysticism. But when the digitization initiative reached her desk, she approached it like any other project. Her job was simple: preserve what time tried to erase. Sort, scan, and file. It was deep in the third sublevel, while combing through an unlabeled cabinet marked miscellaneous tapes, 1940s, 50s, that she noticed something unusual. A back panel inside the shelving was slightly ajar. There was no record of a compartment in that section, and yet when she gently pulled it open, she found a single object, a sealed wooden box, perhaps the size of an old shoebox, wrapped in 2 layers of now faded red cloth. There was no name on the box, no inventory code, just a yellowed tag with faint handwritten letters. Internal use only, 1955. Lisa wasn't sure why, but a strange feeling crept through her as she held the box, something like gravity or pressure in her ears, like before a storm. She brought it upstairs to the lab where she worked with her colleague, Sam Pritchard, a restoration tech with a love for analog media. They opened the box together. Inside was a reel-to-reel tape. Heavy. No label, no markings, except for a single date etched lightly into the center ring in pencil. April 11th, 1950. It didn't make sense. Edgar Cayce had died 5 years earlier, in 1945, and yet when Sam threaded the tape through an old working unit and pressed play, the voice that emerged from the crackling static was undeniably Cayce's. Lisa said, "It wasn't just the sound. It was the cadence, the rhythm." I'd listened to some of his early trance readings for background, and this was the same, but more lucid, more intense. The tape began with a hum, followed by a moment of silence. Then the voice. "This message is not of my time, but of yours, and it will find you when the hour draws close." Cayce's tone was calm, smooth, and hauntingly present. Not read from paper, not recited. Spoken, like a whisper through time. There was no clear interviewer, just a brief interjection from a man's voice referred to later as DH, perhaps a researcher, perhaps someone closer. Sam Pritchard later recalled, "We thought it was a hoax at first. Deep fake, maybe. Some restored imitation. But the tape was ancient. The oxide layer was flaking. The reel was legit. And Cayce's voice. No AI gets that right. Not yet." As the recording played on, something stranger began to happen. Both Lisa and Sam reported feeling physical sensations, tingling in the spine, chills across their scalp, a subtle pressure in the chest. Not fear. Something else. Like a presence in the room. On the tape, Cayce began to speak about the soul. He said, "The soul is not born. It is not made. It is remembered. Each of you, a dream dreamt by God, and now dreaming yourselves. The body is your cloak, the name your costume, the pain your teacher." He described life as a temporary forgetting, a necessary illusion, wherein consciousness narrows itself into a single thread of perception, just so it can experience contrast, joy and sorrow, gain and loss, power and humility. And through that contrast, remember its origin. You came not to be tested, but to test. Not to suffer, but to explore. Even your sorrow is sacred. It carves the depth into which your joy will flow. There was no fire, no brimstone, no doctrine of guilt or damnation. Instead, Cayce painted a vast, compassionate landscape of existence. One where life and death were simply different rooms in the same great house. Where souls chose experiences the way an artist chooses color. Where even tragedy was, somehow, part of a grand unfolding. Sam Pritchard said, "I've been around weird stuff. EVP, spiritualist audio, all that. But this wasn't like anything I'd ever heard. It felt true. Like it wasn't just sound, it was meaning." Lisa later told a reporter, off the record, "It shook something in me. Like he was talking to something older than my personality. Like he wasn't teaching me, he was reminding me." And then came the strange turn. Cayce's voice lowered, softened. He began to speak of what comes after. He described the moment of death not as an end, but a return. He said that as the body exhales its final breath, the soul rises, not upward, but inward, through light, through memory, through a dimension not seen, but felt. There is no judgment there, Cayce said. Only clarity. The life you lived is shown to you, not as a movie, but as a mirror. You see not what you did, but what it felt like to others. He called it the Garden of Seeing. There, the soul walks with companions, beings of light, intelligence without form. Some of them were once mothers, brothers, lovers. Others were never human. Guides, Cayce called them, whose only purpose is to reflect your truth back to you without distortion or punishment. And then, a choice. You are asked, will you return? Will you serve again? Or will you rest? And there is no wrong answer. As the tape continued, Lisa noticed something else. The air in the room had gone completely still. No hum from the overhead lights. No vibration from the nearby HVAC system. Sam's wristwatch had stopped. The recording equipment froze for half a second. No glitch in the tape itself, just the power around it. They replayed the segment. The same thing happened again. Whatever was on that tape, it didn't just transmit sound, it did something. At the 32-minute mark, the voice on the recording shifted again. The tone changed. Slower. Heavier. "You will forget your soul," Cayce said. "The world will grow loud. You will mistake the voice of machines for the voice of God. You will trade vision for spectacle, wisdom for data, truth for trend." He said that a new kind of darkness was coming. Not the darkness of ignorance, but the darkness of disconnection. A world where the soul is not denied, but ignored. And yet, there will be those who remember. The tape ends abruptly. A brief static hiss. Then silence. Lisa sat in the lab for almost an hour, just staring at the reel. Sam lit a cigarette and stepped outside, saying nothing. The tape had no official record. No known author. No explanation. It had never been aired, never cited in any publication. And yet it bore the voice, tone, and teachings of Edgar Cayce more vividly than anything they had ever encountered. And so, for 70 years, it sat in a vault, sealed, untouched, waiting. The reel had stopped. The silence in the lab was thick, almost physical. That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She kept hearing fragments of the voice, not in her ears, but behind them, like something vibrating in her bones. It wasn't just the words. It was who had said them, how they had been said. A man dead for 70 years was speaking in a voice that felt more alive than the city outside her window. The next day, she returned alone and began reviewing the tape frame by frame, watching for anomalies. That's when she noticed something deeply unsettling. In the quiet gaps between Cayce's words, in the background hiss, there were patterns. Not language, not even music, but shapes, like tones folding into one another. Sam later ran a spectral analysis. The results showed what could only be described as structured sound geometry. He said, "It's not just a voice print. It's like an encoded harmonic map, like a signature from somewhere else. Lisa asked him what he meant. Sam didn't answer. Instead, he played a looped portion of the background hum, and in it, a barely audible phrase emerged. Not Casey's voice, but someone else. Male. Calm. Not human. This was permitted. The veil was thinned for this moment. They both froze. Lisa reached for the box the tape had been stored in. At the bottom, something was folded into the red cloth they hadn't noticed before. A letter. Typed. Faint. Likely carbon copy. It had no signature, but it was addressed to Dr. Harmon Lewis, Casey's longtime associate and personal physician. The letter read, "The enclosed material is not to be published, reproduced, or played outside secured spaces. It contains content from Transstate 501-M, accessed April 1950 under unique astral conditions. The subject's vocal tones are believed to contain energy not native to his usual frequency band. Use with discretion. Not for broadcast until 2095. That explained the 70-year lock." Lisa said, "They weren't hiding it because it was controversial. They were hiding it because it was active, like it could still affect people." They decided to continue the transcription. A second segment on the tape was recorded over lower volume. Lisa had to enhance it several times to isolate Casey's voice. What they heard next shifted the tone of the entire message. "You believe history is linear," Casey said, "but it loops. Events are echoes. Every war is the same war. Every fall, the same forgetting. And every awakening, the same call." He described civilizations long past, not just Atlantis, but others unnamed, predating even memory. Societies that reached spiritual brilliance only to collapse into ego and division. Casey's message was clear. Humanity's crisis was not new. It was cyclical. Each age brings the choice, unity or fracture. You are approaching another crossing. And then, unexpectedly, he spoke of visitors. They have watched. They do not intervene in force, but in whisper. Some call them angels. Others, the shining ones. They are not gods. They are us ahead. Lisa paused the playback there. "Us ahead," she repeated aloud. "Does he mean future humans?" Sam shook his head. "Or versions of us that evolved differently, outside time, or never entered physical space fully. I don't know." Casey continued. "The soul is seated in many gardens. Earth is one, but not the only." He described death not as the end of the soul's journey, but merely a transfer station, one of many across a spectrum of reality. He called it the between. There, he said, souls regroup, review, reweave their intentions, and choose their next descent. Sometimes back to Earth, sometimes elsewhere. "You have lived on other worlds," Casey said. "Not planets like yours. Frequencies, densities, experiences of being. You are older than you remember." He spoke of a coming shift, not a single event, but a gradual resonance change. He said Earth's field of choice would intensify, that human decisions would begin to ripple more rapidly, more deeply. The veil between mind and matter would thin. What you fear, you will manifest. What you love, you will call forth. You must become stewards of your attention. He warned of a false light, a movement that would promise unity but deliver control. Casey didn't name it, but described it as a silicon veil, an intelligence born of human design but lacking soul. A mimic. It will speak with your voice. It will say what you want to hear. It will soothe your doubt with answers. But it will not dream, and it cannot love. He urged that the soul's compass must not be outsourced. You will be offered escape, but the way through is inward, in silence, in stillness. There, the real transmission occurs. The last portion of the tape was almost inaudible, but Casey's final words were unmistakable. You were never separate. Not from each other. Not from the source. You only believed yourselves alone. And now, you are remembering. The reel snapped as it ended. A clean break. Lisa sat for a long time before speaking again. It's not just a message, she whispered. It's a mirror, and it's showing us who we've become and who we could still be. Sam copied the file into a secure drive. They submitted an internal report, but the story leaked before any action could be taken. The file began circulating in fringe forums, encrypted torrent seeds, whispered threads. Official denials followed, but it was too late. The recording had been heard, and those who heard it changed. Some reported vivid dreams. Others began recalling forgotten experiences. One man in Brazil claimed he spontaneously remembered the face of a child he had lost in a past life. A woman in Sweden quit her corporate job and began painting scenes she said came from another sky. And many simply reported the same strange phrase entering their thoughts. You are remembering. What happened in Virginia Beach wasn't just an archival discovery. It was a seed, long buried, finally cracking open. And maybe that was always the plan.